Hey guys, tonight we're dipping our toes, carefully so we don't dissolve them in acid, into a time of corsets, arsenic and eyebrow wigs, the world of Victorian beauty treatments. If you thought your 12-step skincare routine was intense, buckle up. Victorian women spent more time getting ready than you spent convincing your dog to come inside during a thunderstorm. But first, take a second to like this video and subscribe, but only if you actually enjoy what I do here. And leave a comment telling me which beauty treatment you would absolutely refuse, even for immortality. It's always 2 a.m. somewhere, and I want to know who else is up Googling Victorian face cream ingredients with morbid curiosity. So, dim the lights, switch on a fan for that soothing background hum, and get as comfortable as your 21st century mattress allows. Maybe do a little self-care, moisturize, or just sit very still and be grateful you're not about to be painted with lead. Let's pause for a moment. Have you ever wondered what Victorian women would think of Botox? Would you survive a day with your face coated in mercury? Could you commit to a beauty routine that involves wearing your own hair on your arms? Did anyone ever actually enjoy being massaged by a mustache-wielding doctor with a machine that looked like it could jumpstart a horse? Did anyone, anywhere, ever escape the smell of burnt feathers and ammonia? And now, congratulations. You've just woken up in the drawing room of a fashionable Victorian home. It's 1872. Your skin is tingling, your eyebrows are missing, and someone's about to offer you a complexion wafer. Don't eat it. Good luck. You open your eyes to the gentle sound of your maid scraping frost off the inside of your bedroom window. Congratulations. Your first beauty challenge is surviving the fresh air that smells mostly of coal and horse. Time to prepare for the ritual humiliation known as the Victorian beauty routine. Let's set the scene. Your bed, grand by the standards of the era, is slightly more forgiving than a pile of hay, but still manages to squeak at every movement, like it's judging you for even attempting to get comfortable. Your pillow is overstuffed, lumpy, and dusted with the faintest trace of lavender and a stronger note of whatever mold thrives in English humidity. Before you can stretch, your joints offer a chorus of polite Victorian cracks and pops, a reminder that even the most delicate beauty has to fight off early-onset arthritis from sleeping in a room where the temperature rarely bothers to rise above haunted cellar. You draw back the blankets, heavy, woolen, and woven to trap both heat and dreams of summer. The cold air hits you instantly, sharp as gossip at a garden party. The only thing standing between you and freezing solid is a thin nightgown and the hope that fashion will eventually invent thermal underwear. You consider burrowing back under the covers, but you know what's coming. A day of social obligations, eyebrow management, and a dozen creams designed by people who've never tested their own products. The morning routine begins with a mandatory cleansing, Victorian style. That means your maid, bless her, has fetched a pitcher of water so cold it could revive the dead. You splash it on your face, the shock jolting you awake faster than coffee. Forget fancy cleansers or gentle exfoliants. This is a full-body experience. You're left pink-cheeked and wide-eyed, ready for a day of pretending you're not slowly becoming hypothermic. The water smells faintly of iron, maybe a little frog, and the vague memory of something that died upstream last week. Next up, soap. But not the kind that smells like orchid rain or mountain meadow. This is soap made from animal fat, lye, and a dash of Victorian optimism. It's rough, yellow, and the texture is somewhere between scrubbing pad and vintage cheese. It exfoliates in the sense that it removes everything: oil, dirt, dignity, and the top layer of your skin. By the time you're done, you're squeaky clean, emphasis on the squeaky. As you shiver by the window, your maid unfurls the curtains, letting in the greyish daylight that manages to be both blinding and gloomy. Outside, London coughs itself awake. You see a smoggy sunrise, the silhouettes of carriages, and a faint, persistent fog that's 1 part weather and 3 parts burning coal. Victorian wellness experts recommend fresh air for the complexion, which would be hilarious if you had the strength to laugh. Now it's time to address your hair. Victorian beauty manuals recommend brushing it for exactly 100 strokes, a practice presumably invented by someone with a grudge against shoulders. You sit, rigid, while your maid attacks your scalp with a boar bristle brush. The process is both invigorating and deeply humbling, especially when you spot the latest casualty, another hairpin bent by sheer force of will. You briefly wonder how many women throughout history have secretly plotted against their hairdressers. After that, the real fun begins. Tonics, creams, and the careful avoidance of anything that might imply you sweat. You apply a lead-based face cream for that dewy, pallid look, a color best described as Victorian fainting ghost. There's a bit of arsenic powder for brightness, a dab of rouge if you want to look like you might have once seen the sun, and a swipe of mascara that contains just enough mercury to make you question your life choices. Dressing is an ordeal unto itself, requiring a small team, 3 pulleys, and a prayer to Saint Elastic. Corsets are tightened until you can feel your breakfast, weak tea and dry toast, climbing into your throat. You're laced, buttoned, bustled, and primped until you look like a fragile, over-decorated mannequin. Perfect for the standards of the day, but slightly less ideal for breathing. By the time you're finally ready, your face is glowing, possibly with mild lead poisoning. Your waist is cinched, and your hair is a shellacked monument to Victorian engineering. You stare into the mirror, expressionless, because smiling causes wrinkles, and prepare to face a day where survival and beauty are basically the same thing. Welcome to your morning. Try not to pass out before lunch. Your day begins with a bracing splash of water straight from the well, a Victorian skincare secret. So invigorating, it's basically a jump scare for your pores. Forget warm water. The only thing steaming here is your sense of dignity. The first thing you notice about the water is that it has an attitude. It doesn't just cool your face, it stings, it seizes, it seeps directly into your bones and takes up residence. Victorian pipes are decorative at best, so this isn't the gentle tinkle of a modern tap. It's an iron pitcher, heavy enough to use as a murder weapon in a locked room mystery, and the water within is so cold it would make a polar bear politely decline. You could try to let it sit and warm up, but the drafty room would simply chill it further out of spite. There's a certain ceremony to the splash, as if each morning is a trial by frost. Your maid pours it into a basin with a clank that echoes through the house, letting you know it's almost time for battle. The first handful to the face is like slapping yourself awake with a handful of snow. Refreshing, yes. But in the same way, being hit by a runaway carriage is refreshing. The water bites, the water judges, the water dares you to blink. Victorian women believed that icy water was the secret to a firm and youthful complexion. Probably because after the first splash, you looked so shocked and pale that you had no choice but to pass for 10 years younger. The shock is immediate and thorough. Your skin puckers, your pores snap shut, and any trace of sleep is instantly replaced by the existential dread of being both clean and freezing. You try to imagine yourself as a Roman empress at the baths, but the only empire you're ruling is a tiny, shivering fiefdom of goosebumps. In the rare event you attempt to heat the water, your options are both limited and laborious. There's no tap labeled hot, only the optimistic hope that someone thought to boil a kettle over the fireplace. The catch: boiled water is a luxury reserved for tea, illness, or the accidental dousing of a poodle during bathing day. You're on your own, and the water knows it. Victorian beauty manuals insisted that cold water invigorates the mind and stimulates the skin. What they don't mention is the side effect: a full-body shudder that makes you question whether beauty is truly worth it. Still, you persevere. rubbing your face with the rough, slightly mildewed towel provided by your maid. It is, without fail, the same towel that's been in rotation since last Thursday and has ambitions of starring as sandpaper in its next life. As the process continues, you take a moment to marvel at the logic. Here is a society that invented anesthesia and the sewing machine, but draws the line at heated bathroom plumbing. If you were truly dedicated, or unreasonably optimistic, you might even dip your whole face in the basin, practicing a version of the ice facial that modern influencers would call cryotherapy. Victorians called it not dying of embarrassment. You call it the longest 10 seconds of my life. Once you're finally dry, if you can call it that, your skin feels tight, your eyes are wide, and your hands are so numb that you could probably thread a needle without noticing if you stabbed yourself. Still, there's a certain pride in surviving the ordeal. Victorian women wore their chill as a badge of honor. If you could withstand a cold water splash every morning, what was a little arsenic powder or whalebone corset compared to that? And so, invigorated and lightly traumatized, you step away from the basin, cheeks flushed with the peculiar blend of circulation and emotional damage. You look in the mirror and see a face that survived its first trial of the day. Congratulations. Your pores are closed, your spirits are moderately dampened, and you're ready for whatever fresh beauty horror the morning brings. The cold has done its job, and so have you. Now on to the next step. Soap that's only slightly less abrasive than the Victorian era itself. Let's talk cleansing. Your soap is made of animal fat and lye, and the exfoliation is so intense you're not sure if you're cleaning your face or sanding down a canoe. Bonus: the smell lingers, and not in a good way. Soap, for the Victorian woman, is less a gentle cleanser and more of a warning to all living skin cells. Prepare to meet your maker. The bar itself is dense, yellowish, and suspiciously uneven, having been hacked from a larger block in the kitchen by someone with strong feelings about elbow grease. It's slick, it's rough, and it somehow manages to be both greasy and brittle at the same time. If you drop it, it will chip the basin. If you use it, it will chip your resolve. The main ingredients, animal fat and caustic lye, come together in a kind of chemical truce. The fat comes from the less photogenic bits of cows, pigs, or whatever unfortunate beast wandered too close to a Victorian kitchen. The lye, on the other hand, is made by soaking ashes in water until the liquid could dissolve a small fence. Together, they create a product that technically gets you clean, but at the cost of most of your upper dermis. You pick up the bar, still slightly slimy from yesterday's adventures, and rub it between your hands, trying not to think about its provenance. Immediately, your palms tingle with the sensation of microscopic sandpaper. The lather is underwhelming, a few sullen bubbles, and a greyish scum that clings to your skin like a pessimistic barnacle. You apply the soap to your face, and instantly regret every decision that's brought you to this point. Victorian exfoliation is not so much about removing dead skin as it is about forcibly evicting it. The scrub is both literal and metaphorical. Your cheeks turn a festive shade of red, equal parts irritation and old-fashioned friction burn. The soap bites, scratches, and tugs at your pores. It removes yesterday's lead-based face cream, any dignity left from the cold water splash, and probably a few years from your projected lifespan. You'd like to believe that you're revealing a fresh, glowing complexion underneath, but mostly you're unveiling a look best described as distressed mahogany. The scent is something special, a heady blend of tallow, smoke, and faint barnyard undertones, punctuated by the ghostly memory of the animal's previous life. Victorian advertisements might promise the delicate fragrance of lavender or a hint of rose, but what you actually get is more reminiscent of laundry day at a slaughterhouse. The odor lingers on your hands, face, and, if you're particularly unlucky, in your hair for hours. In polite society, this is why people invented perfume. The truly committed Victorian might follow up the initial scrub with a pumice stone, just to really finish the job and ensure that no molecule of moisture escapes unscathed. This is beauty by attrition. You're not just getting clean, you're fighting for your life. Each session leaves you a little pinker, a little rawer, and one step closer to understanding why portraits from the era look so stoic. Everyone was probably just too sore to smile. If you think about complaining, remember that for most Victorians, this was an upgrade. Before commercial soap, many had to make their own or settle for washing with whatever alkaline mixture happened to be lying around. If you had sensitive skin, tough luck. If you had any skin left at all, congratulations. You made it through another round of the great Victorian scrub-off. By the end of the ordeal, your face tingles and your nose twitches. You dry off with a towel that's seen better centuries and try to convince yourself that this redness is the healthy flush of youthful vigor, not just mild chemical burns. The mirror offers little reassurance. But hey, at least you're clean. By Victorian standards, anyway. You've endured the soap, survived the sandpaper, and are ready to face the world smelling faintly of livestock and hard-won cleanliness. Onward, then, to the next treatment. You're glowing, possibly radioactive, but definitely glowing. Breakfast of champions. Tiny wafers containing just enough arsenic to make your skin glow, and possibly your hair fall out. The goal is pale, ethereal beauty. The result is a nervous system that files for divorce. Victorian beauty isn't satisfied with just scrubbing and scouring your outer layers. Now it's time to address the inside, where the real damage can be done. You sit at your dressing table, a delicate porcelain plate before you, decorated with little morsels that look suspiciously like communion wafers, but with the energy of crime scene evidence. These are arsenic complexion wafers, a miracle of modern science, or, more accurately, a miracle of modern marketing. You're told that with regular use, your skin will become radiant, almost transparent, and that men will swoon at your delicate pallor. No one mentions that the only thing swooning in the long run is your bloodstream. You gingerly place one of the wafers on your tongue. It tastes faintly of nothing, which is a small mercy. Victorian advertisements promise a beautiful lily whiteness and a perfectly clear, marble-like appearance. What they fail to disclose is that arsenic, a substance best known for its starring role in 19th century murder mysteries, is not, strictly speaking, food. You swallow, and almost immediately your stomach has questions. You ignore them. Beauty, after all, requires sacrifice, and sometimes that sacrifice is your basic survival instinct. For Victorians, a pale face is everything. Tanned skin is for the working classes, the outdoorsy types, and anyone who has to actually do things for a living. You, on the other hand, are expected to look like you've never seen direct sunlight or manual labor, or, ideally, either. The arsenic wafer becomes a ticket into the world of the idle, untroubled elite. The more translucent you appear, the higher your social standing. This is beauty as status symbol, and also, arguably, as a public health warning. Side effects begin subtly. First, there's the radiant glow. Your skin really does look luminous, mostly because your capillaries are putting in overtime trying to compensate for the poison. You notice your cheeks becoming smoother, your blemishes fading, and your friends slowly distancing themselves because they swear you've started glimmering. You develop a soft, otherworldly paleness, somewhere between Victorian angel and person who's been locked in a basement for 3 weeks. At first, it's thrilling. At second, it's concerning. But beauty, in the Victorian sense, is not for the faint of heart. As the weeks go on, you notice your appetite dwindling, your mood wobbling, and your hair shedding like a startled cat. There are days when you're not sure if you're glowing or just seeing spots from mild arsenic poisoning. But the adverts promise results. And so, you soldier on. You're told that these are just adjustment symptoms, which is Victorian for ignore it and hope it goes away. Your friends are all in on the secret. At tea, conversation turns to complexion as reliably as the weather, and everyone has a story. My sister tried the wafers and hasn't needed blush since, someone says brightly. My cousin's skin became so pale that her doctor was genuinely concerned. Another offers, as if this is the highest compliment. There's always a rumor about someone who overdid it, a cousin who glowed so brightly she scared the servants, or an aunt who tried doubling the dose and was last seen talking to her houseplants. Of course, the men in your life are oblivious. They just know you look delicate and pure, and that you excuse yourself from dinner more and more often these days. If they notice that you seem a bit tired, or that you avoid solid foods and strong breezes, they chalk it up to fashionable frailty. In Victorian England, the ideal woman is a little mysterious and frequently unwell. The real secret, of course, is that the arsenic wafer isn't the only toxic thing you'll encounter today. But for now, you smile serenely, your skin aglow with the kind of radiance you can only buy from a pharmacist with loose morals. It's a complicated feeling, half pride, half existential dread. But isn't that the very essence of Victorian beauty? Suffering stylishly, glowing at your own risk, and always pretending everything is perfectly fine. For that flawless porcelain look, nothing beats lead. Smear on some Venetian ceruse and enjoy the gentle, tingling sensation of your skin dissolving into next week. Side effects may include hallucinations and spontaneous poetry. Victorian beauty wisdom is clear on this point. The best face is the one that looks like it's carved from fine bone china and sees as little sunlight as possible. To achieve this luminous, otherworldly effect, you reach for a small glass pot containing the era's most infamous cosmetic, lead-based cream, sometimes called Venetian ceruse, sometimes spirited away for grown-ups, always a hazard. If you're lucky, it comes with a faint scent of violets. If you're unlucky, it just smells like paint thinner and regret. You unscrew the lid and peer inside, greeted by a paste so pale it seems to glow under the feeble morning light. You dab a little on your fingertip. The texture is thick, slick, and disturbingly cold, like smoothing wet marble onto your face. No one warns you that applying it is less like putting on moisturizer and more like icing a very nervous cake. But fashion demands commitment, and Victorian fashion demands the kind of commitment you usually reserve for dental surgery. With a careful hand, you smooth the cream over your cheeks, your nose, your brow, layer upon layer until your skin disappears under an opaque film of ghostly perfection. Instantly, the tingling starts. It's a subtle burn, the kind of sensation that suggests beauty is pain, was meant as literal medical advice. You pause for a second to wonder if it's supposed to sting this much, then remember, all Victorian beauty rituals sting this much. It's tradition. As the lead cream settles in, your face becomes a living canvas. Fine lines vanish, pores close up shop, and any hint of a freckle is smothered under a chalky white mask. You look, briefly, like an angel, if that angel was also about to enter witness protection. The desired effect is clear. A flawless, porcelain complexion that's the envy of your social circle. The undesired effect is also clear. The beginnings of a headache, and the distinct feeling that your skin may be staging a protest. But you're not done yet. Beauty manuals recommend finishing with a dusting of rice powder and, for extra shine, a dab of scented pomade at the hairline, presumably so people have something nice to smell when you faint. If you catch a glimpse of yourself in the mirror, it's an odd experience. The reflection is familiar, but also strangely distant, like seeing yourself cosplaying as a haunted antique doll. Of course, every ritual comes with its risks. The labels warn, quietly, in very small print. that extended use of Venetian ceruse may cause dermal distress, nervous disturbances, and melancholy of the finest order. Translated, you might lose feeling in your fingertips, break out in rashes, or begin reciting melancholy poems to your breakfast. But is that really such a high price to pay for a complexion that's technically more mineral than skin? The great secret of the cream is that while it covers, it also corrodes. Over weeks and months, the lead seeps in, doing its slow, poisonous work beneath the surface. Your friends may notice you're looking a bit ethereal these days, or that you've started daydreaming mid-conversation, your eyes glazed with either romantic longing or early-onset lead-induced confusion. If anyone asks, you just smile serenely, hoping they won't mention the flaky patches or the odd metallic sheen. Still, in the eyes of Victorian society, you're a vision. Dinner guests compliment your complexion, usually from a polite distance, and family portraits capture your pallor for the ages. You're beautiful, mysterious, and just a little bit see-through. Sure, you might be hallucinating the family cat playing Chopin on the pianoforte, but honestly, who among us hasn't wanted a bit of escapism now and then? By the end of the day, your porcelain mask is beginning to crack, and your skin feels like it's learned a harsh lesson. But that's tomorrow morning's problem. Tonight, you'll wipe away the residue, knowing you'll do it all again, and again, and again, because nothing says timeless beauty quite like a skincare routine that could outlast your will to live. Congratulations, you're not just ready for society, you're ready for the chemistry lab, the poetry salon, and possibly the afterlife. In the Victorian era, you are the very portrait of health. Just try not to eat anything with your hands. Eye makeup gets the dangerous edge with a hint of mercury, because nothing says come hither like shimmering eyelids and mild neurotoxicity. Try not to blink too hard. Let's set the scene. You've survived the morning's gauntlet of freezing water, animal, fat soap, and facial treatments that would make a Roman gladiator cry. Now it's time for the final touch, the eyes, the windows to the soul, or in this case, the slightly foggy windows with a warning sticker. Your dressing table is a collection of tiny pots and brushes, each promising beauty, mystery, and a faint chance of chemical warfare. Victorian eye makeup isn't for the faint of heart or the clear of vision. Your mascara comes in a small, elegant tin decorated with delicate flourishes, as if the packaging alone can convince you it's not deadly. The ingredients? Beeswax, soot, oil, and just a dash of mercury, because apparently the goal is to look so good. People forget to ask why you're blinking so slowly. You unscrew the pot and peer inside. The contents shimmer slightly, a dark and inviting pool that reflects just enough light to look enticing. You dip a brush in, roll it carefully, and begin the delicate ritual of painting your lashes. The sensation is cool at first, then cold, then distinctly tingly. It's not just opening your eyes to beauty. It's also a crash course in Victorian chemistry. You fight the urge to rub your eyes as the formula begins to set, forming a lacquer that's equal parts alluring and alarming. Mascara isn't the only option, of course. For an even bolder look, some women mix mercury-based powders with lampblack, applying the resulting goo directly to the lashes. If a few stray drops make their way into your eye, well, that's just part of the adventure. Blinking becomes an act of courage. And if your vision swims a little, you can always blame it on the morning fog. The end result is lush, dark lashes with a subtle metallic shimmer, the kind of look that says mysterious but also, please keep me away from open flames and medical professionals. You admire your handiwork in the mirror, careful not to smile too wide or risk cracking your face cream. The effect is striking. Your eyes look bigger, brighter, and slightly more haunted. There's a certain danger to your gaze now, as if you might recite forbidden poetry or spontaneously recite the periodic table. If anyone asks how you achieve such drama, you coyly reference secret ingredients and avoid mentioning that half of them are banned by modern law. But the real secret is in the side effects. Mercury, as it turns out, is not just for thermometers and alchemists. It's also great for turning a night of flirtation into a week of headaches. Over time, your eyes might water, your lids grow puffy, and your moods become as unpredictable as the English weather. Victorian beauty manuals suggest dabbing rosewater on irritated eyes. But they don't say much about what to do when your lashes start falling out, or you develop a fondness for staring vacantly at wallpaper. Of course, the bravest, or most fashion-forward, Victorians double down, applying layer after layer until their lashes are so thick and dark they could signal ships in the harbour. In dim candlelight, the mercury glints like tiny stars, a constellation of danger right on your face. Your admirers are enchanted, leaning in a little closer, perhaps even willing to overlook the slightly metallic scent wafting off your cheeks. In the end, isn't that what every beauty routine is about? Sacrificing a little health, a little common sense, and perhaps a little peripheral vision in the name of allure. So you flutter your lashes, careful not to blink too hard or too often, and prepare to face the world, dazzling, mysterious, and just a little bit hazardous. Mercury in your mascara is the perfect metaphor for Victorian beauty. Brilliant, risky, and only occasionally accompanied by an urgent trip to the doctor. Sleep tight, and don't rub your eyes, unless you want to see what Victorian drama really looks like. Thin, arched brows are in, and yours have been plucked into non-existence. Never fear. Simply glue on some tiny wigs made from mouse fur. They're like little mustaches for your forehead, and no, they don't look natural. It's another morning in your Victorian beauty adventure, and today's first order of business is confronting the barren moonscape that is your brow line. In this age, the height of sophistication is a brow so finely arched and so tragically sparse that people can't tell if you're surprised, angry, or just caught in a perpetual state of "did I leave the gas lamp on?" Modern trends have nothing on Victorian dedication. A single stray hair is a personal insult to your lineage, so you take to your brows with the tenacity of a landscape gardener working against nature. Plucking is more than a ritual, it's an act of faith. You sit, perched uncomfortably on a velvet stool, pinching tiny, cruel tweezers in one hand and a compact mirror in the other. The goal is to achieve a thin, elegant arch. But after a few too many plucks, you begin to resemble a startled porcelain doll or a billiard ball with opinions. The pain is sharp and constant, and it's not lost on you that Victorian society has found yet another way to make beauty indistinguishable from punishment. Eventually, you are left with the classic barely there brow, a canvas so blank that artists might weep with envy. But society abhors a vacuum, especially on a woman's face. Enter the eyebrow wig, possibly the most eccentric beauty hack of the century. These miniature wonders are crafted from mouse fur. Yes, really. Lovingly sheared, dyed, and trimmed to mimic the shape of human eyebrows. It's a niche market, and you try not to imagine the job interview. So, what do you do for a living? I give mice the world's tiniest makeovers. Applying your new eyebrows is a process that combines artistry, hope, and a small amount of existential dread. The adhesive is a mysterious concoction of gum arabic and possibly the tears of those who tried and failed before you. You delicately press each mouse fur masterpiece above your eyes, willing them to stay put until at least tea time. The result, ice unexpected. Instead of the sophisticated arch promised in the advertisements, your new brows have a subtle upward tilt that suggests you are perpetually skeptical of everyone and everything. There are hazards, of course. A sudden gust of wind, an especially animated conversation, or a particularly steamy cup of tea can send your carefully applied mouse moustaches adrift. Few things in Victorian society are as mortifying as losing your brows mid-brunch and watching them flutter gently to the floor, like tiny, disillusioned caterpillars seeking a better life. There's an art to recovering them with dignity. Pretend to sneeze, drop your handkerchief, and sweep them back into place as casually as possible. No one will mention it, but everyone will notice. In the rare moments when your eyebrow wigs are sitting pretty, you feel a peculiar sense of triumph. Yes, they're made of mouse fur, and yes, they shine strangely in candlelight, but you are on trend. The brows complete your look. Thin, arching, and slightly off-kilter. They frame your eyes with an energy best described as Victorian surprise party. You may ask, why not draw them on? Some do, with charcoal or soot, but even then the effect is more tragic pantomime than timeless beauty. At least with eyebrow wigs, you can remove your brows at will, achieving both the height of fashion and the world's easiest disguise. By the end of the day, your brows have seen things, drama, high tea, a brief stint stuck to your gloves. You peel them off, sigh with relief, and marvel at the sheer inventiveness of historical beauty. Tomorrow, the cycle begins again. For now, you store your mouse fur moustaches in a velvet-lined box, ready to transform you once more into a paragon of Victorian style, or at least a woman with eyebrows that can survive a stiff breeze and a skeptical glance. Want to look wide-eyed and innocent? Drop some deadly nightshade into your eyes. You'll get big, glistening pupils and possibly the sudden urge to describe colors out loud to strangers. Victorian beauty isn't just about complexion or eyebrows. It's about the gaze, the all-important, soulful stare that can make a gentleman weak at the knees, or at least question his grip on reality. Enter Belladonna, or beautiful lady, a plant whose reputation swings wildly between dangerous poison and must-have beauty hack. Only in the Victorian era could a toxic nightshade become the centerpiece of your morning routine. The ritual begins with a tiny glass vial tucked among your other mysterious cosmetics. Its label is handwritten, the script elegant and slightly ominous, as if warning you and flirting with you at the same time. Inside, Belladonna extract, a few precious drops of distilled danger. You steel your nerves, tip your head back, and let your maid carefully squeeze one drop into each eye. The effect is immediate. Your pupils expand, swallowing up the color of your irises and turning your gaze deep, dark, and slightly unhinged. This was the height of allure in Victorian society. A look that said, I am innocent and mysterious, and also possibly seeing into the void. It's a shortcut to doe-eyed beauty, with a lingering side effect of might walk into the furniture at any moment. Blinking feels odd, the world appears softer around the edges, and suddenly, sunlight is the enemy. Your vision blurs just enough to turn every face into a dreamy painting, and candlelight becomes a shimmering haze. If you had any lingering desire to read or embroider, you can forget about it for the next few hours. Instead, you spend the morning gazing enigmatically out the window, looking like a tragic heroine waiting for her sailor to return. You may also find yourself squinting a lot, not because you're suspicious, though who could blame you in Victorian England, but because the light is suddenly much too bright, and the world just won't stop swirling. Society, of course, adores the effect. At tea, compliments flow. Your eyes are so luminous, they murmur. Or, you look positively bewitched. No one asks why you're missing the saucer and pouring tea onto the carpet. They just assume you're lost in thought or artfully eccentric. You could probably trip over a houseplant in front of the entire parlor, and someone would declare it a bold new dance. The conversation inevitably turns to vision. One lady admits she once used 2 drops and ended up narrating the wallpaper for an hour. The paisley is especially vivid today. Another recalls a friend whose eyes looked so hypnotic she was nearly proposed to. twice in one afternoon, and once by her own uncle. Everyone agrees it's a small price to pay for such mystery. There's even a rumor of a duchess who accidentally overdosed and spent an entire season with a squint so dramatic it launched a brief but passionate fashion trend. Of course, there are the warnings, the pamphlets, the quiet rumors of blurred vision, headaches, or the occasional fainting spell. Doctors grumble about the risks, muttering things like permanent damage and possible blindness. But what do doctors know? They're hardly the arbiters of taste. As with all things Victorian, the pursuit of beauty is a delicate balance between admiration and mild self-endangerment. Eventually, as the day winds down and the Belladonna begins to wear off, you feel the return of normal vision, along with a pounding headache and the vague sense that your eyes have been staring into eternity. You retire to your room, light a single candle, and watch the shadows play on the wall. Your eyes, still a little too large and glossy, catch the light and hold it, making you look like a particularly philosophical barn owl. As you drift to sleep, you marvel at what you've endured. Poison for beauty, risk for romance, a touch of hallucination in the name of allure. Tomorrow, you might see clearly, but tonight, you rest knowing you've gazed into the abyss. And the abyss probably asked for your beauty routine. Blush is made from carmine, aka crushed beetles, carefully dabbed onto your cheeks so you don't look too healthy. Remember, if you appear to enjoy living, you've gone too far. Applying rouge in Victorian England is a subtle, high-stakes balancing act, equal parts chemistry, artistry, and existential dread. You begin by opening a dainty little pot of carmine, its contents a deep crimson powder, dazzling under the morning light. You know its origin, tiny beetles from distant lands, laboriously collected and sacrificed so that your cheeks can bloom with just the right touch of morbidity. It's a strange legacy, this insect alchemy, but one that comes with the promise of high society's approval, provided you remember to look more consumptive than content. You swirl your fingertip, or if you're fancy, a rabbit fur puff, into the powder and tap off the excess. Victorian fashion dictates a certain approach to color. The goal is not the hearty glow of someone who enjoys the outdoors or, heaven forbid, exercise. The goal is the faint suggestion that you're still alive, but only just. Too much color, and you risk looking common. Too little, and people start whispering that you've finally caught the wasting sickness. It's a fine line. One dab too far, and you're a peasant. Too pale, and you're practically auditioning for your own wake. With painstaking care, you apply the carmine to the apples of your cheeks, watching your reflection for any sign of excess vitality. Rouge is best when it's nearly undetectable, a pink that says, "I have feelings, but not I have a pulse." You must also avoid any hint of a streak or, heaven forbid, a clownish spot. Rouge, in the wrong hands, is a social death sentence. You work it in with slow, deliberate circles, holding your breath and practicing the stoic, vacant gaze that's so in vogue among the portrait artists and undertakers. The irony, of course, is that everyone knows you're wearing it. In a culture obsessed with natural beauty, almost no one is naturally this shade of gently used rose petal. But polite society plays along. "How radiant you look today, Miss Eliza," they'll say, even as their own cheeks are dusted with the exact same South American beetle remains. It's a silent conspiracy. All of you pretending that you simply woke up looking like the inside of a Valentine's Day card, despite living in a country where sunshine is a rumor and the average diet is 85% boiled potato. If you're feeling daring, you might add a little rouge to your earlobes or dab a smudge onto your lips. The effect is calculated, vulnerable, romantic, and always one step away from tragic. Looking too robust is the ultimate faux pas. Happiness, after all, is suspicious. Only poets and children display unfiltered joy, and everyone knows children are just future adults waiting to be subdued. Of course, the downside of using crushed beetles, apart from, well, using crushed beetles, is that the color can transfer. If you're not careful, you'll find little stains on your gloves, handkerchief, or scandal of scandals, the collar of a suitor who leaned in for a whispered secret. You learn to sit very still at gatherings, careful not to sweat, laugh, or move your face in any way that might reveal signs of life. At dinner, you master the art of smiling only with your eyes. By evening, your cheeks are still faintly flushed. Your reputation is intact, and your carmine pot sits on the vanity like a silent guardian of your social standing. As you remove your makeup, the crimson vanishes, revealing the true pallor beneath, a face that is both the blank canvas of Victorian longing and, for a few hours each day, the masterpiece of a crushed beetle's brief but meaningful life. Congratulations. You look exactly as the world expects, lovely, fragile, and only slightly less alive than your makeup. It's time to put on your corset, the Victorian version of a bear hug from a judgmental aunt. Take a deep breath, your last one for a while, and let your organs get to know each other very intimately. Corset time. The phrase alone is enough to send a shiver down your spine, if, indeed, your spine is still mobile enough to shiver. This is the centerpiece of Victorian fashion, a garment engineered not for comfort or practicality, but for the pursuit of that holy grail of beauty, the hourglass waist. The smaller, the better. If you can achieve a circumference that rivals your average fruit bowl, you're on the right track. If you can breathe, you're probably not trying hard enough. The ritual begins with you, standing in your chemise, arms lifted as your maid holds up the corset like some ancient instrument of both elegance and terror. There is a moment of calm, a silence before the storm, where you contemplate your life's choices. Then you step in, and the dance begins. The stays are placed, the laces are threaded, and your maid adopts the stance of a champion tug-of-war contestant. She pulls, you gasp. The whalebone stiffeners, inserted lovingly or vengefully into the garment, press firmly against your ribs. At first, it's just a snug squeeze, a gentle suggestion that your organs might want to get to know each other better. But as the laces tighten, it's less of a suggestion and more of a compulsory office icebreaker. Your stomach makes the journey upwards, your liver sidles up to your lungs, and your spleen, well, your spleen is filing a complaint with management. Just a little tighter, miss, your maid says, with the cheerfulness of someone who doesn't have to wear the thing. You cling to the bedpost, knuckles white, as she cinches you in. The world narrows to a small, breathless tunnel. Your voice rises at least half an octave. You consider your future as a soprano. Once it's finally fastened, you're upright, posture perfect, waist artificially whittled to a circumference last seen on decorative urns. You can't slouch, you can't bend. You can, however, faint. An activity that's not only accepted but practically expected. The Victorian lady's fainting couch isn't just for show, it's a necessary part of everyday survival. If you feel dizzy, simply swoon gracefully onto the furniture. Bonus points if you can do it without wrinkling your skirt. Breathing is now an activity you do in short, polite sips. Eating is ambitious. Dinner parties become a delicate ballet of nibbling a single biscuit, sipping weak tea, and pretending that you're not quietly hallucinating about removing the corset with garden shears. You hear stories of women who fainted during waltzes, or whose ribs cracked under the pressure, always told with a kind of grim pride, as if internal injuries are the mark of true fashion dedication. But the rewards, you're told, are endless. Men admire the tiny waists, women envy the silhouette, and the dress drapes perfectly, its lines unbroken by the messy realities of a human torso. In public, you float, back straight, head high, every movement measured and graceful. Because sudden motion is both socially discouraged and physically impossible. You become a living sculpture, a testament to the length society will go in pursuit of beauty. By nightfall, when it's finally time to unlace, the relief is immediate and indescribable. Air rushes in, organs settle back into their usual squabble for space, and you are left with red marks and the vague sensation that your ribs may be plotting revenge. For a brief, glorious moment, you feel both weightless and boneless, a rare Victorian luxury. So here's to the corset. The garment that defined an era, terrified a generation of internal organs, and still somehow managed to make you feel like the most elegant creature in the room, if only you could sit down without assistance. Hair care is simple. You don't wash it. Or at least, not often. When you do, it's with egg yolks, gin, and a prayer. If you're lucky, your hair emerges only slightly stickier than before. Let's start by debunking a myth. In Victorian times, glossy, freshly washed hair was less a goal and more a rumor. Washing your hair too often was considered reckless, possibly even dangerous. Society firmly believed that if you so much as looked at a bottle of shampoo more than once a month, you risked inviting headaches, chills, and scandal. A well-bred scalp, like a well-bred spaniel, was best left undisturbed except on very special occasions. When washing day finally arrives, a lunar event in its own right, you prepare for battle. The ritual is a logistical operation involving towels, bowls, combs, and the vague hope that everything will dry by Michaelmas. The process begins with the main ingredient, eggs. Not the whites, heavens, no, only yolks will do, rich in natural oils and questionable aftertaste. You crack a few, separate with expert fingers, and whisk until the mixture looks suspiciously like the world's least appetizing pudding. But why stop at eggs? Recipes abound for creative concoctions. Some recommend a dash of gin, because if you're going to pour something over your head, it might as well be top shelf. Others swear by a sprinkle of grated soap or a splash of rainwater collected from the roof, never mind the bird content. If you're feeling especially ambitious, you might even heat the mixture slightly, though this runs the risk of an omelette on the scalp. The Victorians were many things, but predictable was not one of them. With all the ingredients assembled, you take a deep breath and lean over the basin. Your maid, the unsung hero of personal hygiene, pours the eggy, boozy mixture onto your head with a gentleness born from years of practice and mild resentment. The initial feeling ice unexpected, warm, viscous, and only slightly reminiscent of breakfast. You massage it in, working through tangles and old hairpins lost in the previous month's adventure. A faint, alcoholic aroma fills the air. Some say this is invigorating, most just say pungent. Next comes the rinse. Warm water is ideal but rarely available, so you settle for water that is not actively frozen. You rinse and rinse, but there's always a nagging suspicion that somewhere an errant bit of yolk is clinging to a strand for dear life. If you're unlucky, your hair dries with a faint sheen and the occasional whiff of barnyard. But, miracle of miracles, it is, technically, cleaner than before. Slightly. You run your fingers through it, feeling for stickiness, then decide it's good enough for another few weeks. Between washes, Victorian women have tricks to keep things looking passably presentable. Hair powder, sometimes rice, sometimes starch, sometimes crushed violets, soaks up the oil and adds volume. Scented pomades help distract from any lingering aroma, provided you don't stand too close to an open flame. And elaborate updos serve as architectural marvels, hiding sins, secrets, and the occasional stowaway bobby pin. Combing is another event. 100 strokes a night with a boar bristle brush, all in pursuit of shine, strength, and perhaps redemption. Split ends are ignored. Tangles are confronted with a stoic resignation. And the concept of wash and go is the stuff of futuristic fantasy. By the time you emerge from your hair-washing ordeal, you are exhausted but triumphant. Your scalp tingles, your hair shines in certain lighting, and you smell faintly of gin and eggs. You smooth your locks, pin them up, and return to the parlor with the quiet pride of a woman who has faced chaos and come out on the other side, only slightly stickier, but considerably more legendary. Feeling brave? Try the latest trend, washing your hair with ammonia. It'll strip the oil, the color, and probably some of your memories. The fumes are free. It's wash day again. A rare occasion made even rarer by your willingness to experiment. You've tried the egg yolks, you've dabbed with gin, but today you're feeling bold. Enter the Ammonia shampoo, the Victorian era's version of extreme sports for your scalp. According to beauty magazines, it promises unparalleled cleanliness, unparalleled shine, and a scalp so invigorated it may never forgive you. The experience begins with the telltale scent. Sharp, nostril, burning, and immediately recognizable as the stuff you'd rather keep under the kitchen sink. The recipe is simple, which is rarely reassuring in Victorian beauty. 1 part ammonia, several parts water, and one very sturdy sense of self-preservation. As you prepare your basin, the fumes rise up, filling the room and clearing your sinuses with ruthless efficiency. Your eyes water, your spirit falters, and your maid opens a window just in case. You lean over, heart pounding, and begin to pour the mixture over your head. The initial shock isn't the cold, but the pure, unmistakable scent of chemistry at work. Victorian ladies claimed that ammonia could dissolve oil, remove dandruff, and leave hair dazzlingly clean. In practice, it feels less like a beauty ritual and more like a trust fall with household cleaning supplies. As the liquid touches your scalp, there's a tingling, no, stinging sensation. Your hair, which has valiantly survived weeks of powders, pomades, and the occasional bird, begins to submit. Oil lifts away. So does color, as you watch the rinse water swirl with suspicious tints of brown and gold. Strands feel squeaky, like a window cleaned to within an inch of its life. You wonder briefly if your hair will ever forgive you, or if it will simply pack up and leave in the night. The sound of coughing drifts in from the hallway as your maid retreats, eyes streaming, vowing never to mention this in her memoirs. You massage the scalp, willing yourself to believe the advertisements. Invigorates follicles, stimulates the mind. So far, all it has stimulated is a burning desire for fresh air and a new identity. The stinging continues. The fumes wrap around your head like a Victorian halo, and for a moment, you think you can smell colors. Victorian society is all about appearances, so the final verdict is not up to you, it's up to your social circle. Once the ordeal is over, you pat your hair dry with a towel and begin the inspection. The good news. Your hair is light, airy, and so free of oil it could float away on a gentle breeze. The bad news. It's also free of moisture, pigment, and, in some places, structural integrity. Running your fingers through your hair, you notice it squeaks. Not metaphorically, actual, audible squeaking. Cleanliness, it seems, comes with a soundtrack. There's an undeniable brightness to your locks, a shine so aggressive it borders on blinding in the right light. Friends comment on how your hair glows, though one quietly asks if you've had a run-in with a local apothecary's mood enhancement powder. The compliments pour in, along with a few sidelong glances and the occasional step backwards when the breeze shifts. By the end of the day, your hair is clean, unquestionably, chemically, unforgettably clean. The lingering fumes provide a kind of portable aura. Wherever you go, people know you've been bold. You retire for the evening, scalp tingling, nostrils singing, and make a silent promise to your hair. Next month, back to eggs and gin. Or maybe just a hat. Congratulations! You've survived the Ammonia shampoo experience. A ritual that strips away everything but your ability to endure. Sleep well, and dream of a world where hair care doesn't require ventilation or a note from your physician. Want volume? Add a switch, someone else's hair, pinned artfully to your scalp. The only problem is remembering whose hair you're wearing and whether it's still attached by dinner. Victorian hair fashion isn't just a matter of personal growth. In fact, it's often not personal at all. Welcome to the era of hairpieces, wigs, switches, chignons and braids, all woven, clipped, and pinned with a dedication usually reserved for structural engineering. The simple logic of, if you don't have it, borrow it, reigns supreme. And there's no shame in admitting that this morning's luxurious updo is, at minimum, a team effort. The first step in the process is the switch, a long glossy strand of hair carefully matched to your own, or at least as closely as the London light allows. If you're lucky, it's a perfect blend. If you're not, well, that's what hats are for. These switches are big business. There's a whole cottage industry devoted to collecting, cleaning, and styling human hair. And the phrase, locks of love, has a distinctly mercenary undertone. You purchase them from the local hair merchant, who may or may not assure you the hair came from a willing participant. The less you ask, the better you sleep. You sit in front of your vanity, real hair swept into a bun, as your maid carefully pins, loops, and knots extra hair in every conceivable direction. The goal is volume and drama. Sweeping buns, intricate braids, cascades of curls that would make a Greek goddess jealous. The look is effortless, achieved only by spending a solid hour, 3 handfuls of pins, and half a bottle of bear grease pomade to keep everything obediently in place. If you're particularly ambitious, you might attempt the Apollo knot or waterfall of Venus. Hairstyles so elaborate they have their own diagrams in magazines and occasionally require scaffolding. But there are risks. Victorian society is rife with tales of wardrobe malfunctions, and hairpieces are no exception. At any given party, there's always a whispered legend about the lady whose switch tumbled unceremoniously into the soup or whose wig shifted mid-waltz, turning her into the talk of the season. You learn to move your head gracefully. No sudden turns. No aggressive nodding. Applause is kept to a minimum, and enthusiastic laughter is dangerous territory. The best part? It's not just you. Your friends, rivals, and distant cousins are all carefully pinned and woven, each head a collaborative masterpiece. Hairpieces become the currency of friendship. Lending a chignon for a cousin's wedding, swapping braids for a gala, or, in moments of true solidarity, covering a disastrous haircut with a borrowed waterfall of curls. There's a secret thrill in knowing you're never more than a few pins away from instant transformation or instant catastrophe. Of course, hair isn't the only thing these switches attract. Victorian London is not known for its hygiene, and a particularly unwise or unlucky lady may find her chignon playing host to uninvited guests. Lice are the unspoken spectre haunting every updo. The true sign of social status isn't just the height of your hair, but the speed with which you can detect and destroy invaders. For best results, frequent inspections, peppermint oil, and a healthy sense of paranoia. As evening falls, the pins come out and the hairpieces are unfastened, untangled, and laid gently in their velvet boxes, ready for tomorrow's masterpiece. Your scalp tingles with relief, and you marvel at how, despite the risks, there's a strange camaraderie in Victorian hair fashion. Each borrowed curl and woven braid is a tiny act of community and hope. An elaborate game of let's pretend, played by women who are very good at pretending. By night, your own hair, such as it is, breathes again, and you settle into bed, grateful to be reunited with your real scalp. Tomorrow, you'll choose a new switch, or perhaps risk your own curls for a day. Until then, you dream of simpler styles and hair that doesn't need a ledger and a name tag. For longer lashes, glue small tufts of hair to your lids with gum arabic, the world's least reliable adhesive. Now blink gently, or risk a furry surprise in your tea. Victorian beauty standards are not known for their subtlety or mercy, and the eyes are no exception. In an era obsessed with delicate femininity and dreamy, wide-eyed gazes, long, fluttering eyelashes are the non-negotiable sign of allure. Naturally, if your own lashes are insufficient, perhaps the result of one too many mercury-laced mascara applications, the next logical step is to make your own. From scratch, with whatever you have lying around, the eyelash extension ritual begins at your vanity, where you and your trusty maid gather supplies. Tiny tufts of hair, sometimes human, sometimes horse, sometimes of deeply mysterious origin, a jar of gum arabic, and an unwavering sense of optimism. Gum arabic, for the uninitiated, is the 19th century equivalent of the glue stick in your elementary school art kit, only slightly less effective and far stickier. It dries with all the speed of an indecisive snail, and once set, has the grip strength of a polite handshake. Application is a delicate art, one that requires the patience of a saint and the steady hand of a surgeon. First, you dip a minuscule bundle of hair into the gum arabic, twirling it just so, and then, with bated breath, press it gently to your lash line. If you're lucky, the hair stays put and doesn't immediately droop into your eye. If you're unlucky, the hair sticks to your fingers, your cheek, or simply vanishes, never to be seen again. Blinking is now a high-stakes game. You want your eyes to look large and mysterious, not to accidentally flutter a clump of lashes onto your crumpet at tea. You learn to blink slowly, thoughtfully, the way one might signal for help in Morse code. Each blink carries a prayer that the glue holds, that the extension doesn't dislodge, and that you won't have to retrieve a stray eyelash from your teacup under the watchful gaze of Lady Witherspoon. But the results, oh, the results! If everything goes according to plan, you are transformed. Your lashes are lush, impossibly long, and almost convincingly natural. You look like the heroine of a serialized Gothic novel, forever on the verge of fainting in candlelight. Suitors are entranced, friends are envious, small children are a little bit terrified. You catch a glimpse of yourself in the mirror and marvel at the artistry. Even if one lash does point at a jaunty 45-degree angle, there are, however, minor drawbacks. Gum arabic, as it turns out, is sensitive to humidity, emotional outbursts, and the faintest suggestion of rain. A single teardrop or a fit of laughter can loosen the whole arrangement, sending lashes cascading down your cheeks like furry little shooting stars. If you live in London, where the weather changes more often than the Queen's wardrobe, you quickly develop a sixth sense for precipitation. There are also questions. Whose hair is this? Best not to dwell. Are the extensions even? Almost, if you squint, which, ironically, is now much harder to do. Will they survive a brisk stroll through the park, or are you destined to leave a trail of clues for future archaeologists? No one can say for certain. At the end of the day, you remove your lashes, peeling away the remnants of gum arabic, with a satisfying, if slightly alarming, tug. You sigh with relief, knowing you'll go through it all again tomorrow. For now, you store the tufts in a velvet pouch, your eyelids grateful for a break and your soul grateful for the absurdity of Victorian fashion. Congratulations, you have survived another day with lashes intact, social standing unblemished, and only a faint whiff of glue lingering as you drift off to sleep. Rest well, you've earned it, one blink at a time. Victorian dentistry means bleaching your teeth with sulfuric acid. Yes, it works. No, you will not enjoy anything you eat ever again. In the endless battle for beauty, a dazzling smile is a must, or at the very least, teeth that are somewhat less grey than your average London afternoon. The Victorians, undaunted by nature or common sense, took matters into their own hands with a method both spectacularly effective and profoundly unwise. Sulfuric acid. Nothing says bright smile quite like using the same chemical that can dissolve a small coin. The ritual begins, as always, at the vanity. You're armed with a little ceramic pot, an ivory-handled brush, and the steady resolve of someone who's already survived mouse-fur brows and mercury-laced mascara. A quick sniff of the acid solution is enough to make your eyes water and your dentist, if he had a time machine, weep for humanity. But Victorians are nothing if not determined. A pale, glowing complexion and ruby-red lips are wasted if your teeth look like they belong in a Dickensian pawn shop window. You dip the brush, tentatively, into the sulfuric acid. The instructions are as precise as they are alarming. Apply lightly. Do not linger. As you raise the brush to your mouth, you remember the beauty columns warning against excessive exposure, lest you strip more than just stains from your smile. Still, you press on. The first swipe brings a tingle, a warning shot from your enamel, which was already on thin ice thanks to a lifetime of treacle, port, and questionable water. The sensation escalates quickly. It's less tingle, and more your mouth is staging a revolt. Your gums tighten, your tongue recoils, and your teeth begin to feel both cleaner and more exposed than a society scandal. It's working, you tell yourself, as a drop of acid hisses gently against your molars. Victorian advice says to spit promptly and rinse with water, preferably soft rainwater, since hard tap water will only compound the insult. Afterwards, you inspect the results. To your delight and mild terror, your teeth gleam. They're white, so white that they seem to reflect the dim gaslight, outshining your jewelry and possibly your hopes for a long dental future. But there's a catch. Food, once a daily pleasure, now presents a host of new perils. Anything hot stings, anything cold stings more. You begin to treat soup and pudding like they're ticking time bombs. The thought of biting into an apple? Unthinkable. Bread must be soaked, and hard candy is now as forbidden as open flirtation in a drawing room. The long-term consequences of sulfuric acid, naturally, are dire. The acid eats away at enamel, turning your teeth into little chalky relics, smooth and white for now, but with all the structural integrity of a crumbling cathedral. You trade sensitivity for beauty, comfort for compliments. There's a certain masochistic pride in joining the ranks of the beautiful and the dental precarious. A secret sisterhood of women who can smile serenely at a ball but wince at the mention of toffee. Still, society notices. "What lovely teeth!" they exclaim, unaware of the price. Your smile is a social weapon, deployed sparingly and with just a hint of martyrdom. At tea, you practice laughing with your mouth closed and sipping with exaggerated caution. When people ask for your secret, you mutter something about good fortune and careful brushing, while silently hoping the conversation won't turn to dinner invitations. By the time you retire for the night, your mouth is a battlefield, clean, white, and just a little sore. You lie back, reflecting on a day spent chasing the perfect smile. Tomorrow you'll do it all again, unless your teeth decide to retire before you do. For now, you sleep and dream of a future where beauty doesn't bite back quite so literally. Freckles are the mark of the working classes, so yours must go. Remedies include lemon juice, ammonia, or just accepting your fate as that freckled cousin no one talks about. In Victorian society, beauty is not merely a matter of taste, it's a code, a hierarchy, and, occasionally, an emergency. Nowhere is this more apparent than in the war against freckles. Those innocent little sun kisses, endearing in a child or a shepherd, are social poison for any aspiring lady. The prevailing wisdom is simple. The paler your skin, the higher your class. A perfect, freckle-free complexion declares to the world that you have never done a day's labor, or, ideally, even set foot in direct sunlight. Unfortunately, your face is a battlefield of brown speckles, the result of a single ill-fated afternoon in the garden or perhaps a reckless stroll to the milliner. Now, every glance in the mirror is met with a sigh and the realization that you are, in the eyes of your mother, one step away from being disowned and sent to live with the country relatives. The pressure mounts. Nobody wants to be remembered as that freckled cousin, especially when the alternative is the cousin with luminous, nearly transparent skin. The remedies are many, and predictably both alarming and ineffective. You start with the most innocent, lemon juice. Slices are pressed against your cheeks until your skin puckers and your eyes water from the sting. Advice columns claim that daily dabbing will fade unsightly marks. What they fail to mention is the lingering scent of citrus, which causes every passing housecat to treat you like a walking garnish. When lemon juice fails to work its magic, you graduate to stronger measures. Enter ammonia, a substance more suited to laundry day than to skin care. You pour a small amount onto a handkerchief, hold your breath, and brace yourself for the burning sensation that follows. If nothing else, you reason, your freckles may simply retreat in fear. As the fumes rise and your eyes water, you contemplate just how much you're willing to suffer for a place in the drawing room. For the most desperate, or the most delusional, there's the freckle lotion from the apothecary, a proprietary blend of secrets, spirits, and, judging by the smell, possibly dead fish. The result? Well, if your goal is to replace freckles with a red, patchy rash, success is yours. It is at this point that you seriously consider your final option. Simply owning your fate and cultivating the persona of eccentric, outdoorsy cousin, the one who reads too much, spends time in the garden, and isn't invited to the formal balls. Society is relentless in its pursuit of the flawless face. At social events, a single spot can trigger a cascade of whispers. "Did you see her cheeks?" they murmur behind gloved hands. "She's practically a map of the shires." You learn to position yourself in shadowy corners, avoid direct sunlight, and invest in hats large enough to double as parasols. Powder and paint become your daily companions, layered carefully to create an illusion of pale, unblemished skin, at least until the next strong breeze or fit of laughter. The irony is, of course, that behind closed doors, half the women you know are waging the same battle. At tea, confessions are quietly shared. One friend swears by vinegar, another by buttermilk. You nod in sympathy, all the while calculating how long it would take to emigrate to Scotland and start anew as mysterious freckled heiress. By evening, your skin is a patchwork of red, tender spots, stinging faintly from your efforts. But your freckles, stubborn as ever, remain tiny badges of authenticity in a world obsessed with illusion. You sigh, pat your cheeks with a cool cloth, and remind yourself that some battles are lost for a reason. So you face the mirror once more, a little wiser and a lot more exfoliated. If anyone asks, you tell them freckles are in vogue in Paris, or perhaps a sign of a passionate spirit. If that fails, you always have lemon slices and a hat. Always a hat. For smooth skin, why not soak in a sulfur bath? It's like marinating in 1,000 rotten eggs, but hey, at least you're not exfoliating with gravel this time. There are few experiences in Victorian beauty more memorable or more fragrant than the sulfur bath. While your friends might boast of rosewater spritzes or milk and honey soaks, you know that true commitment to skincare involves braving the world of medicinal stench. The bath itself is a porcelain tub set in the coldest corner of your drafty house, ready to be filled with hot water and that all-important secret ingredient, powdered sulfur. With the first spoonful, the air is transformed. The house cat flees. Your maid coughs quietly. Even the wallpaper seems to cringe. You lower yourself into the bath with a deep, resigned breath, through your mouth if you're wise. The heat is soothing, at least. Victorians are nothing if not practical. After all, sulfur's been a remedy for centuries, praised for its ability to soften skin, heal blemishes, and presumably strip away one's sense of dignity. The trouble is, sulfur doesn't do anything quietly. Within seconds, you're enveloped in the unmistakable aroma of rotten eggs, a cloud so potent it's rumored to cure not just skin ailments, but also sinus blockages and unwanted houseguests. Settling in, you try to focus on the benefits. The beauty columns swear that sulfur draws out impurities and banishes rashes, transforming even the most stubborn complexion into something glowing. The catch, of course, is that the only thing glowing is your self-esteem, which is currently running for the door. You close your eyes, convincing yourself that the burning sensation on your elbows is the feeling of toxins fleeing, not just your skin quietly begging for mercy. The experience is not without hazards. Every so often, a stray bubble rises from the depths, popping at the surface with a sound and smell that is both surprising and profoundly suspicious. You wonder how much of this is chemistry, and how much is simply the universe's idea of a joke. Your maid appears, holding her breath, to ask if you'd like tea. You decline, not trusting your stomach near anything remotely edible. You pass the time reading a magazine, which becomes increasingly challenging as the steam fogs your vision. Every few minutes, you remind yourself to shift positions, partly for the sake of even skin treatment, partly to avoid the suspicion that something might be lurking beneath the sulfurous depths. Rumor has it, some ladies bring orange peels or sachets of dried lavender to mask the odor. In practice, these only serve to add new, equally disturbing notes to the fragrance. Citrus swamp or floral funk. The benefits, so you're told, are cumulative. After half an hour, you emerge, flushed and dizzy, your skin feeling surprisingly soft and every pore thoroughly fumigated. The scent, however, clings stubbornly. It follows you through the halls, wafts behind you at dinner, and lingers in your sheets long after the bath itself is a memory. Your family greets you with polite, wide-eyed smiles. The dog hides under the sofa. Your siblings, ever supportive, drop hints about fresh air and moving out. Still, the next day your skin does feel smoother. Blemishes have faded, and you possess a certain smugness that only comes from having survived an ordeal known to both alchemists and anyone who's ever accidentally cooked a dozen eggs for too long. Your confidence is briefly restored, at least until someone suggests repeating the process next week. So, you've conquered the sulfur bath, a victory for beauty if not for nostrils. You may never smell the same, but you'll be soft, blemish-free, and uniquely qualified to clear a crowded parlour in under 30 seconds. In Victorian England, that's practically a superpower. Ready to relax? Lie down as a mustachioed gentleman in a lab coat connects you to a device that delivers healthful electric shocks to your face. For beauty, obviously, not fun. There is no spa quite like a Victorian spa, where the scent of lavender mixes with ozone and a faint whiff of burning dignity. After weeks of baths, lotions, acids, and beauty crimes, you've arrived at the latest frontier of self-improvement, the electric facial. The advertisements promise miracles, firmed skin, a dazzling glow, maybe even a personality reboot if you're lucky. The reality? Well, the reality is a complicated tangle of wires, anxious anticipation, and the kind of mustachioed confidence only found in gentlemen who dabble in both medicine and carnival acts. The setting is nothing short of theatrical. Heavy velvet curtains, marble busts, a faintly humming contraption occupying center stage. You recline on a fainting couch, and in comes Dr. Wilberforce or Dr. Pemberton, or perhaps a Mr. Higgins, whose only qualification is enthusiasm and facial hair density. He wears a spotless lab coat, a look of grave concentration, and the smile of someone about to demonstrate the marvels of progress. You are the demonstration. Wires are attached to various points along your jaw, forehead, and temples, held in place with straps that look like they belong in a Victorian mystery novel. The doctor cheerfully adjusts dials, explaining the scientific principles with words like galvanic, invigorating, and completely safe. Mostly. You nod, because it's hard to protest with a leather strap under your chin and a crowd of curious spa-goers watching from the sidelines. The device buzzes to life, emitting a sound somewhere between a beehive and a kettle about to boil over. The first tingle is surprisingly gentle, like a dozen polite ants marching across your face. You relax until the dial is turned up and the gentle tingle becomes an enthusiastic twitch. Your cheeks jerk, your brow quivers, and your left eyelid now has a will of its own. The onlookers murmur in appreciation. Dr. Wilberforce assures you this is the sensation of vitality returning. It feels, in fact, like your face is trying to signal Morse code for help. The session continues with varying degrees of voltage, and the promise that every jolt is another step toward radiant beauty. According to spa brochures, electricity stimulates circulation, tightens the skin, and erases lines of worry, assuming you can stop worrying about whether your hair will stand on end for the rest of your life. The electric current is, the doctor claims, barely perceptible. You wonder, as your jaw buzzes and your lips vibrate, what it might be like to experience a beauty routine that is perceptible in any other way. Between zaps, the doctor dabs your forehead with rosewater and asks if you feel invigorated. You nod because your face muscles have temporarily forgotten how to disagree. In the background, the spa pianist plays something soothing, occasionally glancing up to see if any clients have burst into spontaneous combustion. Time stretches. Your thoughts drift. You consider the miracles of Victorian innovation, how something so odd can be at once so modern, so earnest, and so absolutely absurd. At last, the buzzing stops. The straps are removed, and you're handed a mirror. Your face glows, partly from circulation, partly from relief. Your cheeks are flushed, your eyes wide, and you might be sporting a new cowlick or two. Dr. Wilberforce proclaims the treatment a success, jotting down notes for his next paper on the curious side effects of beauty. You pay your bill, collect your dignity, and step back into the cool London air, feeling, if not more beautiful, at least more awake. You've survived the electric spa, a rite of passage for the truly committed Victorian. Whether your skin is firmer or you've just done facial calisthenics is unclear, but as you drift off to sleep later, your jaw still tingling, you can rest assured you've seen the future, and it's shockingly ridiculous. Clear up blemishes with a paste of mustard and flour, applied directly to your skin. It burns, it tingles, it makes you question every decision that led to this moment. The pursuit of flawless skin in the Victorian era is a journey paved with equal parts optimism and household pantry staples. While the modern world may offer salicylic acid or retinol, you, brave beauty pioneer, are handed a jar of English mustard powder and a bag of flour, because when life gives you zits, why not fight them with the ingredients of a ham sandwich? The ritual is, like all things Victorian, both simple and unreasonably elaborate. You start by blending equal parts mustard powder and flour. adding just enough water to make a smooth, yellowish paste. This concoction is rumored to banish spots, brighten complexions, and draw out impurities. It will also, in no uncertain terms, draw out your will to live, at least temporarily. The paste is mixed in a porcelain bowl, its cheerful color belying the chaos to come. You sit at your dressing table, steel yourself, and dab the mixture onto your cheeks, chin, and anywhere your skin has dared to rebel against society's porcelain ideal. The initial sensation is one of warmth, which quickly escalates to a gentle burn, which quickly escalates to a "my face is hosting a small house fire." Beauty columns promise this means the remedy is working. You tell yourself this too, as you blink through the stinging and silently question how bad freckles really are. If you're lucky, the burning will plateau after a few minutes, settling into a steady tingle that leaves you looking flushed, glowy, and only mildly alarmed. If you're not lucky, your face turns bright red, and you spend the next hour waving a fan at your nose, hoping your family doesn't ask why you smell like a ploughman's lunch. There's an art to timing. Leave the mustard plaster on too long, and you'll resemble a cautionary tale from the medical textbooks, complete with impressive welts and a reputation as that cousin who's always experimenting. Not long enough, and you risk losing out on the alleged clarifying benefits. As with most Victorian beauty, the margin for error is distressingly thin. Eventually, you wipe away the paste, gingerly, with a cool cloth, and the weary resignation of someone who's seen too much. Your skin feels tight, warm, and undeniably different. The blemish may or may not be gone, but you can take comfort in knowing that you've likely scared away any lurking bacteria with sheer bravado and a cloud of pungent spice. Social occasions are now a minefield. The smell of mustard clings to you, following you from the parlor to the garden. Friends are polite, asking about the new cologne, but you notice an unusual amount of distance at the tea table. Rumors swirl. Has she taken up cookery? Is she hiding an injury? Why does she always sit near an open window? Of course, you are not alone. Your fellow Victorians share horror stories of their own. The lady who fainted from the fumes, the friend who confused flour with baking soda and ended up with a chemical reaction worthy of a laboratory, the cousin whose mustache has never been the same. Everyone nods in agreement. Beauty is pain. And sometimes, beauty is also condiments. By bedtime, your skin is cool again, and you're left with a story, a faintly spicy aura, and a new understanding of the lengths people will go for radiance. You tuck yourself in, vowing next time to try something gentler, like lemon juice, or perhaps just a well-placed veil. Congratulations. You've survived the mustard plaster facial, equal parts skincare, culinary experiment, and test of personal resolve. Sleep well, and dream of a future where the only thing burning is a candle. Some trends make no sense. Case in point, attaching locks of your own hair to your arms as a decorative flourish. Because nothing says elegance like looking like a glamorous yeti. Victorian beauty is full of mysteries, some captivating, some alarming, and some that make you wonder if everyone was simply too sleep-deprived from wearing corsets. Among these wonders is the baffling trend of hairwork jewelry and, yes, hairwork fashion. You may have heard of keeping a beloved's braid in a locket, but the true aficionado goes one step further, incorporating locks of your own hair directly into your daily ensemble. On your arms. It starts innocently enough. You're at your dressing table, combing out a week's worth of tangles and fallout, gathering a soft, nest-like handful of precious strands. Most people would sweep this away with yesterday's ashes. But you have vision. You know that somewhere out there, a magazine has declared arm hair accents the latest must-have. If less is more is the rule for eyebrows, more is more is the rule for your forearms. The hair is woven, braided, or sometimes simply fashioned into dainty curls, carefully stitched onto ribbons, bracelets, or even sewn directly into the cuffs of your dress. As you pin them in place, you marvel at the ingenuity required to look both ethereal and just a little bit feral. The final effect is less dainty maiden and more debutante werewolf on her first ball night. Your arms, once a landscape of pale and fashionable nothingness, now ripple with homegrown ornamentation. You step out into society, prepared for admiration. The reactions, as ever, are mixed. Your friends pretend not to notice, eyes fixed determinedly on your hat or the far wall. Your rivals suppress smirks. "Is that new lace?" someone asks, delicately. You smile mysteriously and ruffle your hairy cuffs for effect. At least one distant cousin flees the room, muttering about witchcraft and family shame. Your mother, always supportive, asks if this is a statement about animal rights or if you simply lost a bet. There are hazards. The weather is unpredictable. A sudden rainstorm, a spilled cup of tea, or a vigorous handshake can transform your luxurious arm adornments into a matted, dripping spectacle that even the most avant-garde Parisian would struggle to defend. Maintenance, too, is no small feat. Each night you must gently brush your sleeve accents, oil them to prevent frizz, and hope that the cat doesn't get any ideas. But there is camaraderie in absurdity. At salons, other ladies confess, over hushed voices and nervous laughter, to experimenting with hair ornaments. Some even boast of double-layered accessories, a lock from themselves, a lock from their sister, a sentimental bit from the family dog. The less said about the origins, the better. You begin to recognize the glint of pride in the eyes of those who've also dared to wear their personal Yeti couture. Of course, fashion is fickle. One week you're on the cutting edge, the next you're the cautionary tale. But for a shining moment, you are both legend and spectacle. Children gaze in awe, gentlemen avoid the topic. You, meanwhile, revel in the tactile joy of twirling a strand around your finger, knowing that your style is utterly unique, equal parts bravery, eccentricity, and shedding. At the end of the day, you peel away the hairwork cuffs, grateful for a return to plain skin and sanity. You store your creations in a velvet-lined box, ready for the next gathering or perhaps a midnight séance. Because if there's one thing Victorian beauty proves, it's that the line between chic and shocking is as thin as a hair. And sometimes, that's exactly the point. No eyeliner? No problem. Simply char a feather and rub it along your lids for a smoky, "I just survived a house fire" look. Extra points for not poking yourself in the eye. In an era obsessed with expressive eyes and dramatic glances, eyeliner is not just a finishing touch. It's a declaration. Unfortunately, Victorian apothecaries have yet to invent the perfect pencil or smudge-proof liquid liner. Instead, you improvise. Like all great artists, you make do with what's available. A feather pilfered from a writing quill or the family goose, and the most reliable beauty ingredient of all, fire. The process is, in a word, theatrical. You select a feather of suitable length and dignity, usually one with a bit of flair left in it, and hold it carefully over a candle flame. Within seconds, the feathery tip begins to char, curling into an elegant plume of blackened fluff. There's a delicate balance to be struck here. Too much heat, and you're left with a brittle stub. Too little, and your eyeliner is more dust bunny than sultry siren. Once you have your makeshift tool, you move to the mirror and brace yourself. This is not a time for distractions. You lower your eyelid, bring the burnt tip up, and begin the careful, trembling journey across your lash line. The goal is a smooth, smoky effect, the kind of lived-in glamour that says, "I may have barely survived a tragic fire, but at least my eyes are captivating." Inevitably, there are challenges. The feather sheds. trailing wisps of ash onto your cheeks. The burnt tip crumbles, leaving little flecks in the corners of your eyes. If you press too hard, you risk smudging black lines halfway up your forehead, creating a look more startled raccoon than mysterious heiress. Blink too quickly, and you'll find yourself with charcoal tears running artfully down your face, perhaps a bit avant-garde, but certainly not intentional. You pause frequently to assess your work. Is it even? Does it match on both sides? Does it look at all like the seductive illustrations in the latest Parisian fashion plates? The answers: rarely, never, and only if you squint with optimism. Still, you persist, determined to achieve that perfect blend of tragedy and allure. After all, nothing is more Victorian than turning minor disasters into moments of high style. The smell of burnt feather is, let's say, distinctive. It lingers in the air, mixing with rosewater, starch, and the faint aroma of regret. Your maid, ever loyal, wafts a handkerchief near the open window, subtly encouraging ventilation. "Very striking, miss," she says, her voice carefully neutral as she eyes the accumulating pile of charred feathers on your vanity. As you finish, you find yourself a little proud. Your eyes look larger, your gaze more dramatic, even if one eye is a touch smokier than the other. You blink, and only a few stray flakes drift into your teacup. Friends and admirers will marvel at your ingenuity. "How do you get such a mysterious look?" they'll ask, never suspecting that the secret involves a poultry product and a mild fire hazard. For those unwilling to brave the open flame, there are other options. Soot from the hearth, powdered charcoal, even the waxy end of a burnt candle. But nothing compares to the drama and DIY excitement of the feather. Each time you line your eyes, you flirt with chaos and style, with equal parts daring and absurdity. At the end of the day, you remove your makeup with a damp cloth, wiping away the evidence of your smoky adventure. You promise yourself that next time you'll try for symmetry, or at least avoid poking yourself in the eye. For now, you drift to sleep knowing your beauty routine was nothing if not memorable. Proof that in Victorian times, a little resourcefulness and a lot of burnt feathers went a long way. Victorian perfume is a powerful blend of floral notes and household chemicals, including ammonia. One whiff, and you're instantly awake, and possibly halfway to a headache. Of all the rites of Victorian beauty, perhaps none is so loaded with expectation and risk as the final touch: perfume. A lady's scent is her invisible signature, the essence she leaves drifting in the parlor long after she's swept out in a cloud of silk and self-doubt. In an era when personal hygiene is more theoretical than practical, perfume isn't just an accessory, it's a survival mechanism. The bottles are exquisite, cut glass or delicately painted porcelain, with stoppers that click satisfyingly into place. You choose one from your collection, admiring its artistry before steeling yourself for what's inside. The latest fashion, as decreed by the arbiters of taste, is not simply to smell of roses or violets, but to conjure an aroma lively, modern, and impossible to forget. Enter the age of the chemical bouquet. You unstop the bottle and immediately recoil. A sharp, unmistakable tang of ammonia rises, elbowing past the gentler notes of jasmine and tuberose. The floral scent is there, true, but always lurking beneath is a distinctly industrial edge. Victorian perfumers, ever the innovators, discovered that ammonia and other household chemicals fix a fragrance, ensuring it lingers on the skin and in the air, and possibly in your lungs far longer than nature ever intended. Application is a balancing act. Too little and the world will know what you really smell like after a sulfur bath and a mustard facial. Too much, and you'll be the talk of the season. Not for your charm, but for your ability to clear a room faster than a dropped tray of oysters. With a steady hand and a stiff upper lip, you dab a few drops behind your ears, on your wrists, and, if you're feeling daring, at the pulse point on your throat. Immediately, you are enveloped in a cloud that is equal parts floral, chemical, and existential. Friends are polite. What a striking scent they offer. Eyes watering just slightly. At gatherings, you become adept at identifying who has used which brand. The most popular varieties combine heavy floral bases with notes of spirit of hartshorn, ammonium carbonate, musk, bergamot, and the faint suggestion of cleaning day at a hospital. Some claim the sharpness refreshes the senses and enlivens the mind. More accurately, it jolts you awake like the world's rudest alarm clock. The true test of any Victorian perfume is how it performs in the great social arena. Does it mask the after effects of sulfur, egg, and gin-based hair treatments? Can it withstand the heat of a crowded ballroom? Or, more challengingly, the damp closeness of a railway carriage in August? Some say a good perfume is the ultimate disguise, others believe it's merely camouflage for desperation. Of course, there are mishaps. One memorable evening, you catch a whiff of yourself mid-conversation and realize the ammonia is winning. You cough discreetly behind a fan, noticing a faint trail of people giving you a wide berth. On the bright side, you have achieved what every Victorian secretly hopes for: personal space. Evenings end with you peeling off your gloves, finding them faintly scented and slightly stiff. The perfume clings to everything: hair ribbons, lace collars, handkerchiefs, even the family dog, who now also avoids you. The house, once filled with the delicate scent of potpourri, is now unmistakably yours. Floral, formidable, and always a little bit dangerous. As you drift off to sleep, the scent lingers. You may dream of wildflowers and clean laundry, but wake up to the reality of ammonia and ambition. In the Victorian era, that's simply the price of being unforgettable. Too much smiling leads to wrinkles, so Victorians prefer a calm, expressionless mask. Bonus: nobody knows if you're having fun or just silently judging everyone. The rules of Victorian beauty are strict, but none is as paradoxical as the commandment against happiness. At least, visible happiness. A cheerful, laughing face might be endearing at a child's birthday party, but among adults, such displays are viewed with suspicion. To smile is to court disaster, for everyone knows laughter leaves lines. The ideal countenance is placid, composed, and unreadable. The Mona Lisa with less mystery and more existential fatigue. You practice in the mirror, arranging your features into the perfect mask. The goal is a serene, almost spiritual calm, as if you've achieved enlightenment, or perhaps just endured a lengthy sermon. You rehearse your resting Victorian face, smoothing your brow, gently relaxing your lips, letting your eyes go slightly unfocused. The effect is immediate. You look 10 years younger, but also as though you've just received shocking news and are processing it in dignified silence. Family portraits are the ultimate test. You gather with your siblings, parents, and whoever else is around, all of you arrayed in stiff finery before the photographer. No one smiles. No one dares. Even the family dog appears to be suppressing emotion, lest it be mistaken for enthusiasm. The photographer, perched behind a shrouded contraption that takes an eternity to capture an image, urges you all to hold very, very still. Smiling, with its fleeting spontaneity, is simply not sustainable when you must remain motionless for minutes at a time. Social events are exercises in emotional restraint. A witticism at the card table? A subtle twinkle in the eye suffices. An amusing mishap at dinner? A gentle nod. Only children and Americans risk full smiles, and everyone knows how that ends. Laughter, crow's feet, and reputational damage. You master the art of responding to news, good, bad, or baffling with the same measured blankness, offering only the smallest of acknowledgements. Friends and acquaintances may occasionally whisper behind their fans, wondering if you're bored, offended, or plotting revenge. This ambiguity is to your advantage. With a well-maintained mask, you can enjoy the spectacle of social life without ever revealing your true thoughts. You could be moved by poetry, seething with envy, or mentally composing a grocery list no one will know. And that's exactly how you like it. You quickly learn that the mask is protection, not just against wrinkles, but against interrogation. Unsmiling faces are less likely to attract the probing questions of well-meaning relatives or matchmaking aunts. No one asks the calm, placid cousin about her future or her feelings. She is assumed to be quietly content, or at least beyond saving. In the rare moments when you do smile, a brief, tight-lipped concession to amusement, people take note. The gesture is weighted with significance, as if you've revealed a secret. Seldom is a small upturn of the lips so powerful. And, of course, there are the health claims. Manuals warn that repeated laughter or smiling stretches the tissues of the face and hastens the arrival of jowls. The truly dedicated may go so far as to perform daily exercises, placing a finger on each corner of the mouth and pushing gently downward, training the muscles for a lifetime of elegant indifference. At the end of the day, you relax your features and feel a peculiar sense of accomplishment. Your face is as smooth as the surface of a still pond, your intentions as inscrutable as Queen Victoria's. You drift off to sleep, dreaming of a world where smiles are free, wrinkles are badges of honor, and happiness leaves its mark without fear. But tomorrow, you'll don the mask again, for in the Victorian age, serenity is beauty, and mystery is the best defense of all. Getting ready for a party? Layer on all your dangerous creams and powders, pray for no rain, and try to avoid passing out from chemical fumes before dessert. The Victorian dinner party, an occasion so fraught with social peril and beauty hazards that it's a miracle anyone survived the evening, let alone lived to gossip about it the next day. Your invitation arrives, wax-sealed and perfumed, promising a glittering night of music, wit, and reputational risk. The unspoken message, look perfect, or risk being banished to the interesting cousins table for the foreseeable future. Preparation begins hours before sunset. First, you assemble your arsenal: lead-based face creams, arsenic wafers, rice powders, the entire small laboratory you call a vanity. Application is a delicate, choreographed dance. Each cream promises a moonlit glow and flawless pallor, but also delivers a faint tingling sensation that's probably your skin quietly begging for mercy. Rouge is dabbed on with trembling hands, careful not to cross the invisible line between ethereal and alarmingly healthy. Mascara is layered with a touch so light you barely dare to breathe, lest a mercury-laced flake take flight. Next, you tackle the brows, gluing on your mouse fur arches with the steely determination of an engineer. Eyelash extensions follow, delicately affixed with gum arabic, requiring the patience of a saint and the steady hand of a cat burglar. Hair is sculpted, teased, and augmented with switches until your head feels twice its usual size, a feat of Victorian engineering rivaled only by the railway system. A few pins to the scalp? That's just part of the process. Suffering is always in vogue. The finishing touch is perfume, applied liberally to mask not only your own scent, but the combined aromas of ammonia, sulfur, gin, and quiet desperation. The result: an aura so potent it might be considered a public health hazard. You check your reflection, noting with pride that your skin is flawless. Your lashes are long, and you have only a minor headache. In a final act of hope, you powder your nose one last time and pray the evening will be cool and dry. Victorian cosmetics are not, as a rule, waterproof. The coach ride to the party is tense, every bump a potential disaster. You practice holding your face perfectly still, lest a bead of sweat or a sudden sneeze send your hard-won beauty sliding into your lap. Upon arrival, the air is thick with competing scents, floral, musky, and faintly medicinal. You glide into the candlelit drawing room, eyes wide, thanks, Belladonna, cheeks delicately flushed, thanks, Beetles, and lungs prepared to endure a chemical cocktail that would make a chemist blush. Throughout dinner, conversation sparkles and tempers flare. The heat rises, and you silently calculate how many minutes until your left eyebrow begins its slow descent down your temple. You hold your wine glass carefully, always conscious of the enamel situation. One ill-timed sip and you're tasting sulfuric acid all over again. Laughter is restrained, smiling, dangerous. All the while, you scan the room for signs of imminent cosmetic failure, shiny noses, melting blush, or, heaven forbid, a fallen eyelash resting atop the pudding. By dessert, you're light-headed from the perfume and the proximity of a dozen arsenic-tinged cheeks. But you've made it. You're still flawless, still upright, and still in possession of both your eyebrows. The night winds down. The guests disperse. And you finally exhale, relieved, exhausted, and already dreading the cleanup. Victorian beauty at a dinner party is not for the faint of heart. It's an athletic event, a chemistry experiment, and a test of sheer willpower. But if you can emerge on the other side with dignity and most of your skin, you have truly earned your place at society's table, at least until the next invitation arrives. At the end of the day, it's time to scrape, soak, and peel away everything you've applied. There's something soothing about the routine, unless you fall asleep mid-lead mask. Sweet dreams. The Victorian day may have been full of danger, discomfort, and elaborate posturing. But nothing rivals the quiet relief of the nightly unmasking. The world has judged your complexion, your eyebrows, your eyelashes, and your fortitude. Now, alone by candlelight, you prepare to become yourself again, or at least the closest approximation of yourself left beneath the layers of powders, pomades, and hope. The process begins at the vanity, that little altar to transformation. You stare into the mirror, almost startled by your own reflection. It's a strange, spectral beauty. Mouse, fur brows slightly crooked, cheeks tinged with rouge and regret, lips faintly pink, and skin luminous in a way that suggests both radiance and mild lead poisoning. With a steadying breath, you tie back your hair, roll up your sleeves, and get to work. First comes the removal of the most fragile accessories. Eyebrow wigs are gently peeled off, revealing the over-plucked landscape beneath. The lashes, those stubborn, gum Arabic tufts, are coaxed free with a damp cloth, sometimes taking a real lash or two with them as tribute. Hairpieces are unpinned, the day's braids and switches laid out neatly in their velvet-lined boxes. Your scalp tingles, grateful to be free, even if only until morning. Next comes the creams and color. With a soft cloth and a bowl of tepid water, you begin to erase the day's painted illusions. The lead-based face cream requires patience and a strong stomach. As you wipe, the once smooth mask comes away in ghostly smears, leaving your skin feeling oddly lighter and a little bit raw. The rouge follows, beetle red circles fading to pink, then to nothing, as you dab and rinse and try not to think about how many insects gave their lives for your cheekbones. Some stubborn remnants need more encouragement. Enter the cold cream, a concoction of oil, water, and the faint scent of old roses. You smear it over your face, massaging it in as it melts away what remains of powder, paint, and perspiration. The sensation is strangely comforting, a kind of reverse transformation that brings you closer to sleep with every pass. And still, you are not done. Any lingering traces of arsenic or ammonia must be washed away with the finest soap your skin can now tolerate, which is to say, something only slightly less abrasive than a brick. You scrub gently, careful not to inflame the battle-worn patches that have weathered the day's treatments. You pat dry, examining yourself in the wavering candlelight, marveling at the toll and the triumph. For a finishing touch, you brush a light dusting of rice powder onto your face, not for beauty, but for comfort. Its coolness is a balm after the chemical trials of the day. A dab of lavender oil on your temples, a quick brush through your now freed hair. And you feel, for the first time since dawn, something like human. Sometimes you don't quite make it. The exhaustion wins, and you wake in the night with a stiff face, having fallen asleep mid-mask. The lead cream transferred to pillow and dreams alike. On these occasions, you groggily wash up in the moonlit quiet, promising yourself that tomorrow you'll finish the job before fatigue claims you. Finally, you slip into bed, the sheets blissfully cool, your skin tingling and your heart strangely peaceful. The world outside is silent, the judgment suspended, the candles flickering out one by one. As you close your eyes, you savor the softness of clean skin, the emptiness of your bare face, and the knowledge that, for now, you have removed every trace of the day's performance. Sweet dreams, you've survived another round of Victorian beauty, flawed, fabulous, and finally, wonderfully free. You quickly learn that the sun is not your friend. Sunlight darkens the skin, and darkened skin suggests something horrifying. Manual labor. So you shield yourself like a vampire on holiday, hiding beneath parasols, gloves, hats, veils, and the general belief that fresh air should only be enjoyed indirectly. The Victorian relationship with the sun is less warmth and light and more mortal enemy, whereas modern beauty celebrates golden tans and radiant glows. Your place in society depends on remaining as pale as unbaked pastry dough. A single afternoon outdoors, hatless and exposed, could mark you forever in the eyes of watchful relatives. Tanned, your aunt will whisper, as if you've confessed to a life of petty crime. To avoid this fate, you become an expert in strategic self-shading. Before stepping outside, even for a moment, you arm yourself with a parasol, the essential weapon in every respectable lady's arsenal. The parasol is a masterpiece of defensive engineering. Silk panels stitched over delicate spokes, sometimes trimmed with lace or painted with flowers, always large enough to shade you from both sunlight and judgmental stares. Opening it with a flourish, you instantly reduce your exposure to mere luminescent background noise. But the parasol is just the first line of defense. Gloves, always gloves, thin cotton in summer, kid leather in winter, preserve the whiteness of your hands. You marvel at the idea of bare arms, those sun-bronzed working women in the fields. Not for you. Your wrists, like your cheeks, must remain untouched, hidden away from the scandalous rays. On days of particular anxiety, you add a gauzy veil, transforming yourself into an enigma, half mourning and wholly mysterious. Hats are not mere accessories but architectural wonders. The brims grow wider each season, casting deeper shadows. A proper Victorian hat is more like a mobile awning, carefully angled to cover not just your face, but a good portion of the street. Ribbons and flowers help distract from your paranoia. But make no mistake, the sun is always out to get you. Your friends share your terror. On summer outings, the group resembles a flock of overdressed moths, fluttering from shade to shade, huddling beneath the sprawling branches of ancient trees. You learn to walk with your back to the sun, to time your errands for early morning or late evening, and to cultivate an air of vague fragility. After all, nothing excuses avoiding sunlight better than the suggestion of nerves. Fresh air is encouraged, but only if inhaled from the cool, dim recesses of the drawing room, or, at a stretch, the deepest corner of a walled garden. The beauty manuals reinforce the gospel of pallor. Recipes for skin-whitening masks and lotions are passed down like family secrets: cream of almond, vinegar, and the ever-present lemon juice, all in service of chasing away the threat of a tan. You are warned of the dangers of coarse skin, of brown patches and freckles, of the dire social consequences of appearing ruddy. If all else fails, you practice the art of gentle withdrawal, a hasty retreat indoors at the faintest whiff of sunlight, feigning sudden exhaustion or, if need be, an urgent errand involving embroidery. Ironically, the only ones who dare the sun are children and the help, whose brown arms and flushed faces serve as living reminders of what's at stake. You look at them with a mix of pity, envy, and the smallest flicker of rebellion. Sometimes, just before bed, you let your bare hand hover in the last golden beam that slips through the curtains, savoring the warmth on your skin and the small thrill of risk. By nightfall, you review your efforts. No new freckles, no telltale tan lines. Just the reassuring pallor of the carefully protected. You drift to sleep behind drawn curtains, grateful for your parasol, your hat, your gloves, and the steadfast support of society's most cherished irrational fear. Sweet dreams, pale as moonlight, in a world where sunlight is best admired from a safe, respectable distance. It's bedtime. But lying down flat is considered reckless. Wrinkles, you see, form when the face touches pillows. So many Victorian women sleep propped upright, like politely embalmed museum exhibits. You drift off slowly, afraid that gravity itself is plotting against your cheekbones. As night descends on your meticulously protected Victorian bedroom, you prepare for the final, most vulnerable stage of your beauty routine. Sleep. Not just any sleep, heroic, strategic, gravity-defying sleep, engineered to outwit the very laws of nature. The beauty manuals are unanimous. Nothing etches deep lines on a face quite like pressing it carelessly into a pillow for 8 hours. The prospect is terrifying. You can battle the sun, best the bath, and even outmaneuver freckles. But how does one fight the invisible menace of nighttime creasing? The answer: vigilance, elevation, and a stack of cushions tall enough to make the princess and the pea look like a minimalist. You sit on the edge of your bed, already encased in layers of soft cotton and lavender-scented rice powder, and begin arranging your fortress. The goal is to create a gentle slope, just upright enough that your face hovers nobly above the linens, immune to the threats lurking in the goose down. The first few nights are challenging. Sleep does not come easily when you're perched at a 45-degree angle, swaddled in a nest of bolsters, spare shawls, and, if you're feeling extra cautious, a rolled-up towel behind the neck for support. It's a position that invites reflection. And you lie there, listening to the creaks of the house, the distant clip-clop of a carriage, and the sound of your own heartbeat, all while attempting not to slide sideways or crumple downward in defeat. Gravity, it turns out, is a wily opponent. Even as you drift into dreams, your muscles twitch in protest. If you accidentally relax, your head tips, your jaw slackens, and you jolt awake, horrified at the thought of an unscheduled contact between cheek and pillowcase. Some nights, you wake to find yourself clutching the edge of the blanket with white-knuckled determination, chin lifted like a defiant Roman statue. Other nights, you discover you have migrated into a perfect diagonal, a new fold threatening your left temple. You are not alone in your battle. Stories abound of women who've taken extreme measures. Specially designed anti-wrinkle pillows that cradle the skull without ever touching the face, or night bonnets with taut silk panels meant to keep cheeks skyward. One particularly committed cousin of yours is rumored to have slept for an entire year in an armchair, convinced that beauty is found at a 90-degree angle. Morning arrives, and with it, the moment of truth. You peel away the cushions and examine yourself in the mirror, squinting in the grey light. Does your skin look smoother? Has your sacrifice been rewarded? Perhaps. More likely, you're just a little sore, a little more sleep-deprived, and a great deal prouder of your efforts. Your mother assures you that beauty is discipline, and you believe her, even as you suppress a yawn. The irony is, of course, that the stress of not sleeping may be nearly as damaging as a night pressed into feather pillows. But the etiquette books and beauty columns are clear. Vanity is a noble struggle, and sleep, like everything else in life, must be tamed in the service of fashion. You share tips with friends over tea. How best to wedge an elbow, which bolster stuffing is least likely to deflate. How to maintain composure if you're caught dozing at the wrong angle. As the years pass, your upright sleep becomes routine. Your friends may joke that you look like an angel at rest, but you know the truth. You're a warrior in the nightly campaign against time. You drift off each night, determined, elevated, and above all, wrinkle-free. Or at least, as wrinkle-free as a Victorian bedtime will allow. A delicate figure is the height of fashion, which means eating is done carefully, sparingly, and often with guilt. Appetite is considered vulgar. Hunger, on the other hand, is elegant. You nibble lightly, excuse yourself early, and hope no one notices your stomach trying to eat itself. In the great ledger of Victorian beauty, frailty is the golden currency. Strength is suspect. Robustness is gauche, and the only acceptable form of physical activity is swooning decorously at the right social cues. The ideal woman is a study in gentility, pale, faintly trembling, and, above all, exquisitely thin. If you look like you could be toppled by a stiff breeze or the mention of a scandal, you're doing something right. Mealtimes, then, are an elaborate performance. The table is set with more cutlery than a surgical suite, every course a potential minefield of calories and social missteps. The food itself is beautifully presented, roast game, sugared fruits, custards trembling in silver dishes, but you treat each offering with suspicion, as if it's an edible trap. You practice the art of refusal. A polite shake of the head, a murmur of just a morsel, and the ever-popular "I had the most extravagant breakfast," which everyone knows is a lie. When you do eat, it's a performance worthy of the West End. Fork in hand, you dissect a single pea into quarters, linger over a sliver of fish, and move the food around your plate with the dexterity of a chess grandmaster. Bread is picked apart into feather-light crumbs, and dessert, if you dare, is enjoyed with the cautious delight of someone savoring their last meal before a beheading. Your goal is not to nourish, but to suggest. A lady is never hungry. She is refraining, delicate, or simply not in the mood. Appetite is, after all, terribly unfashionable. The merest hint of enthusiasm for pudding or a visible enjoyment of roast chicken is enough to spark whispers. The true beauty is ethereal, living mostly on air, and possibly the idea of soup. Your stomach grumbles? That's the sound of progress. If you faint during a waltz or need to retire early from dinner, all the better. Your fragility is proof of your refinement. The dangers of this regimen are as real as they are absurd. Friends swap tips for suppressing hunger, sipping vinegar, laced water, nibbling on celery, or simply clutching a fan and thinking pure thoughts. Some boast of going days on only a thimbleful of broth, their voices trembling with equal parts pride and low blood sugar. You try not to roll your eyes. Doing so would expend precious energy. Family gatherings are especially fraught. Elderly aunts, remembering sturdier eras, press cakes and meats upon you, tutting at your modern ways. You smile wanly. Explain that your constitution is delicate. and watch as the cake is reallocated to a younger sibling with fewer social ambitions. Your mother quietly reminds you that beauty is pain, and that nothing tastes as good as the approval of Lady Ashcroft. Behind closed doors, of course, the facade sometimes cracks. You dream of bread, potatoes, and mountains of pudding. You sneak an extra bite in the pantry, savoring it as though it were contraband. Occasionally, you catch a glimpse of yourself in the mirror, waist cinched, eyes a little hollow, cheeks artfully pale, and wonder what price you're truly paying for beauty. Still, the rewards are tangible. Compliments rain down. So delicate. What an elegant figure. You look positively otherworldly. You bask in the admiration, stomach grumbling in counterpoint. In a world where beauty is synonymous with frailty, hunger becomes your silent companion, a badge of honor, a secret victory, and, on rare occasions, a cause for midnight cake. As you drift off to sleep, you remind yourself that in Victorian society, elegance is hunger, and the sound of your stomach is just applause from the inside. If poisons aren't available, household acids will do. Vinegar and lemon juice are applied liberally to the face to bleach away any hint of color, freckles, or joy. Your skin stings, tightens, and flakes, which is apparently how you know it's working. Victorian beauty is nothing if not resourceful. When lead creams are in short supply, or you've already maxed out your recommended daily allowance of arsenic wafers, there's always the homegrown approach. An aggressive campaign against pigment, waged with vinegar from the kitchen and lemons pilfered from the pantry. Nature, after all, abhors a vacuum, but Victorian society abhors a suntan even more. The process is deceptively simple and alarmingly familiar. You gather your supplies: a dish of sharp vinegar, a cut glass bowl filled with freshly squeezed lemon juice, and a collection of cotton cloths that will soon be forever scented with salad dressing. The instructions from the beauty columns are straightforward. Apply freely to the complexion. Leave until sensation becomes pronounced. Pronounced, in this context, means until you're questioning all your life decisions. With determined optimism, you dip a cloth into the lemon juice, squeezing out the excess before pressing it firmly to your cheeks. The first contact is brisk and citrusy, a bright sting that quickly escalates to a slow burn. Your skin prickles and tightens, as if it's preparing to leap off your face and start a new life as a fruit. The scent is invigorating. If you enjoy the aroma of freshly disinfected laundry, you alternate between vinegar and lemon. Convinced by Victorian advertisements that a clear, pale complexion is worth any sacrifice. If a single freckle dares to persist, you apply the acids directly, hoping the sheer force of acidity will convince it to surrender. Occasionally, a friend will recommend an even stronger approach: scrubbing with salt or adding a dash of ammonia for extra vigor. The result is a face that is less peaches and cream and more freshly pickled. As you wait for the mixture to do its magic, you take care to avoid sunlight, open windows, and anything that could cause sweat. Sweat, after all, may undo hours of diligent bleaching. You sit stiffly in the parlor, face sticky and gleaming, silently daring anyone to comment. Your siblings wander by, noses wrinkling. Even the family dog seems wary of your new acidic aura. Victorian beauty experts insist that the burning is proof of efficacy. Pain is progress, the manuals say, though you suspect the authors haven't personally tested their own concoctions. As your skin tightens, you imagine the layers of color, freckles, and joy evaporating, replaced by the coveted pallor of the elite. You are, for a brief, shining moment, the human embodiment of a blank page. Eventually, you rinse your face with tepid water, patting gingerly at the now hypersensitive surface. The results are immediate and dramatic. Your cheeks are ghostly pale, your freckles slightly faded, and your skin flaking just enough to resemble a croissant in the making. Radiant, your mother declares. Positively luminous, agrees your aunt, though you notice she keeps her distance at tea. perhaps out of fear of being splashed with lemon. Of course, the glow is fleeting. By morning, the redness has faded to a dull ache, and new freckles seem to sprout as a reminder of your ongoing struggle. But in Victorian society, beauty is an arms race, and you are in it to win, or at least to survive with as few spots as possible. You dutifully return to your routine the next day, mixing vinegar and lemon, determined to outpale the entire social circle. At night, you tuck yourself in with a cool cloth pressed to your face, dreaming of a world where freckles are admired and lemons are reserved for lemonade. But until then, you persevere, stinging, flaking, and very, very pale. Because if beauty is pain, then you, dear reader, are on your way to sainthood. Finally, there's the unspoken rule. Aging is not acknowledged. You powder, tighten, smooth, and squint into mirrors that lie politely. Every ache is ignored, every line disguised, and every birthday quietly passed, as if time itself can be embarrassed into leaving you alone. In the grand pageant of Victorian beauty, the art of getting older is best practiced in secret. Unlike the boldness of the arsenic wafer or the bravado of the sulfur bath, this ritual is a silent daily duel with the laws of nature, a battle waged with soft brushes, sharp glances, and sheer denial. The rules are simple. See no wrinkles, hear no creaks, speak no age. Your vanity is ground zero for the campaign. Each morning, you approach the mirror as if confronting a particularly clever adversary. There's the ever-faithful powder, rice, chalk, or the latest French import, brushed on with religious devotion until every line, freckle, and shadow is blurred into hopeful oblivion. If a crease dares to appear, you fill it with cream, buff it away, or cover it with a strategic swipe of rouge. It's not deception, you assure yourself. It's self-preservation. Of course, some lines are stubborn. The delicate creases around your eyes, the result of a lifetime of suppressed laughter and unsanctioned smiling, resist even the most heroic efforts. You develop strategies. Tilt your head in candlelight. Avoid windows in the morning. And, most importantly, perfect the enigmatic, expressionless gaze that reveals nothing, especially not your true age. It's a look that works for portraits, family dinners, and uncomfortable encounters with old-school friends. The body, meanwhile, insists on sending reminders that time is, in fact, marching on. Knees ache after a long walk, shoulders protest the corset, and your hands, those traitors, grow thinner and more veined. The solution? Gloves, naturally, and a bit of lemon juice on the knuckles for good measure. If the aches persist, you simply rebrand them as fashionable delicacy or the nerves. Victorian medicine is on your side. Every symptom is a sign of refinement. When birthdays roll around, the occasion is marked with all the enthusiasm of a minor tax audit. Cakes are eaten, candles are few, and the year itself is whispered quietly, if at all. Friends may send well wishes, carefully avoiding numbers. Relatives tactfully reference the bloom of youth, a phrase so vague it could apply to anyone from 16 to 60. You nod graciously, accepting the compliment as if you haven't aged a day since the reign of William IV. At social gatherings, the conspiracy of agelessness is maintained with steely determination. You never change is exchanged like a password, while you look just the same as ever is both greeting and shield. Should someone slip, mentioning a long-ago dance or referencing the fashions of 20 years past, everyone swiftly changes the subject to the weather, or perhaps a scandal involving someone even older. In private, of course, you make peace with reality, sort of. You notice new lines, marvel at the silver appearing at your temples, and occasionally allow yourself the luxury of nostalgia. You may even permit a quiet moment of pride, recalling all you have survived. lead creams, corsets, heartbreak, and more. Aging, after all, is proof of endurance, a quiet, stubborn beauty that outlasts fashion. Yet when the sun rises, the routine begins anew. You powder, smooth, and recite the mantra. Not today, time. Not today. The mirror, your ever-loyal accomplice, blurs the evidence. You step out into the world with your secrets intact, chin high, and face serenely unreadable. For in Victorian society, aging gracefully means never letting on that it's happening at all. And if you play your cards right, maybe, just maybe, time will politely wait outside, hat in hand, until you're ready to invite it in. So tonight, as you settle in beneath clean sheets, with not a single mouse fur eyebrow in sight, maybe take a moment to thank the universe for your fragrance-free moisturizer and the blessed absence of lead in your bathroom drawer. Because if history teaches us anything, it's that the pursuit of beauty has always been a little bit desperate, a little bit dangerous, and almost always absurd. Victorian women endured daily rituals that could have doubled as science experiments. Arsenic wafers for a pale glow, ammonia rinses in the name of shine, and electric facials that promised youth but mostly delivered jump scares. They scraped, powdered, plucked, and painted, all for a fleeting chance at beauty, approval, or maybe just a quiet moment where nobody called them ruddy. Their courage was real, their suffering sometimes silent, and their sense of humor, we hope, as resilient as their skin had to be. So as you tuck yourself in tonight, remember that every generation has its own weird beauty secrets. Thankfully, yours probably won't make your hair fall out or your teeth dissolve before morning. History may be strange and a little terrifying, but it's also proof that people will do almost anything for a compliment. And sometimes, just surviving the day with your eyebrows intact is victory enough. Rest easy, knowing your beauty routine won't be written about centuries from now, unless you decide to start sleeping with cold cream and a pet hedgehog on your face. Sleep well, and may your dreams be soothing, your skin irritation-free, and your ancestors very, very proud. Good night.